Okay, so first let me begin by thanking Drew for taking your time and your effort to support our AGM this year. Certainly very interesting to hear your perspective on technical development in the auto industry, because you have a lot higher exposure to that than we do. We all focus on one technology. I've actually rewritten a little bit the start of my speech based on what you've said. So a few things came to mind while you were speaking. And this recipe, or this combination of innovation and determination and credibility. And I think the credibility is the one that I'm most pleased with, because this small company for so many years stood in front of the OEMs and told them about this new material and the confidence. And through those discussions and trials and test fleets, they said, yeah, we trust you guys. Yeah, we can commit to production with this material. So I'm really pleased about that. And innovation, determination, patience maybe on this side of the podium, or rather innovation, determination, and credibility on this side, and certainly the patience on the other side. And without that staying power that we have through the support of the shareholders, we wouldn't have been able to see this thing through. There were some other parallels in the presentation that I found interesting, and one was your reference to a teenager in the 1970s getting hooked on the industry, and it was exactly the same for me. And for me, that happened with a school field trip to the General Motors engine factory in St. Catharines, just a half-hour drive from where I grew up as a boy in Niagara Falls. And I remember going and seeing this engine block entering the production line and changing from a clump of iron into a finished block step by step, and then into the assembly where piece by piece things were added and it started to become an engine. And at the end of the line, there was an operator who connected a fuel hose and an air hose and exhaust and the battery, and he pushed a button, and there on a chain hanging in front of him, the engine hanging freely at chest height, it rumbled and shook and came to life. And it was a fascinating thing, and that absolutely hooked me. And you also mentioned your father. And I haven't ever spoken privately in this group, but my grandfather was a mechanic. And my father and my brother both trained as mechanics. So when it came time for me to go off to engineering school, of course I chose mechanical engineering. But in that first year, I took a course in material science, and I was so interested in it that I had to change. It wasn't an option. I just had to change. And so I went to the materials side. And through those metallurgical years, I got more and more interested on the liquid metal process control. And still today, I regard liquid metal process control as the most fascinating branch of engineering. And so it's great for me to be able to combine the process control metallurgy together with the engine thing that I was hooked on like you as a teenager. So interesting parallels. And we've sat together and we've talked about the industry, and we've sat together and talked about the Detroit Red Wings, but we never compared notes on that. So interesting. Perhaps then enough about the past and the present of the speakers, and we can focus on the past and the present and indeed the future of SinterCast. And let's begin, as we always do in this meeting, by looking at the series production. And this plot shows the annualized growth in series production in the first quarter of the last 6 years. And when we came together last year at this meeting, the production was 1.3 million engine equivalents. And we said that the mature volume of those programs was 1.55. And now when we come together a year later, our production is 1.6 million. So we're actually exceeding the mature volume that we had last year. And these programs that today give us 1.6 million, they have a mature potential of more than 2 million. And I want to put that into perspective, because for SinterCast, it took more than 20 years to break the 1 million milestone in October 2010. And now we sit, as Drew says, poised to make the 2nd million less than 3 years later. And I think that that's a really fantastic development. As you can see, our growth last year was 19%. the compounded annual growth 30%, and something in between that will take those 1.6 million up over 2 million. And with some cooperation and positive market development, we can well expect or hope to have that 2 million barrier when we come together again next year. We can look at the series production in more detail, and this is the way that we normally see it in terms of quarter-by-quarter growth. We had a very strong growth in the middle part of last year, but since then, December last year and into first quarter, the growth has stabilized. And there are two reasons for that. The first reason is the Navistar commercial vehicle program in North America at the Pure Power Foundry in Indianapolis. They produced very hard through the second half of the year to fill the supply chain. And once that pipe was full, they backed off to their stable rate. And so we've had a reduction in that program. And likewise, our production of exhaust components at the Dawson foundry in China, a couple of those components have come to end of life. And so our volume at the end of last year went down quite rapidly. And together, the Navistar program and the Dawson exhaust programs pulling in the opposite direction have cost us about 150,000 engine equivalents. And you know, growing from 1.55 million in fourth quarter to 1.6 million in first quarter meant that all of those other programs had to grow by 200,000 just to give us the positive growth. So we've got a couple of programs at the moment pulling in the opposite direction. We think that a lot of that decline is behind us now when we come back to a more stable platform. Medium term, long term, the growth trend is very clear and very positive. But in the nearest term, while we're still weathering this storm, it's a bit of wait and see to see how we come out of the second quarter. Now, at the moment, we have 13 consecutive quarters of positive growth. And I think that the result for the second quarter will depend not just on the production, but actually the shipment timing. Because what we do to present these numbers, we just take the total shipments from our customers in the month, so in June now, and we multiply that by 12 to give an annualized production rate. And so it depends very much on the shipping timing for June. We can also look at it in terms of the sampling cups, and here you see we have this very strong year last year with 35% growth, a compounded annual growth of about 23%. The sampling cups, it will be a challenge this year to break our production rate of last year. And again, the reason for this is the exhaust production in China. These are small components. The average weight is about 5 kilograms. They come from a small ladle. It's about 800 kilogram ladle. And that means that you have to use a lot of sampling cups to make these parts. And for the exhaust components, we use 1 sampling cup for every 5 engine equivalents. And if you think about our normal engine production, it's more like 1 sampling cup giving 20 to 25 engine equivalents. And so if we lose 15,000 cups from the exhaust production in China, we have to have an increase in engine production of about 300,000 engine equivalents to balance it. Now, so it's much harder to make up the cups than it is to make up the engine equivalents. Nonetheless, we've had a very strong start to the year with sampling cups, so that helps. And I think, again, it's a little bit of wait and see for this year. When we have new installations, customers tend to order a lot of sampling cups, so we have to see how that shakes out. But I think it will be rather stable or perhaps a slight decline in the sampling cup shipments for 2012. There are a lot of growth opportunities, and Drew pointed to some of them, and I'd like to share our outlook on what things can balance the decline that I mentioned and give a positive overall growth. The first one is just an increase in the existing programs. The Ford 6.7 liter V8 that Drew referred to is our largest program. Ford is very happy with the engine. Consumers are very happy with the engine. It's very popular in the market. And, you know, to put it into perspective, we're producing something like 650 of those engines every day. So it's genuinely a high-volume application. And with the popularity of the engine, Ford has decided to put it into some new programs. So it will be in additional vehicles. So we expect further growth for our top-running 6.7-liter V8. In the question period, Drew also mentioned the Jeep Cherokee. So Chrysler has announced that they'll bring a diesel version of the Jeep Cherokee to the North American market in 2013. It's already here in Europe, so it's an easy transition for Chrysler. That is based on our 3-liter V6 that we produce with Tupi in Brazil and Via Motori in Italy. And we're already starting to see the incline in that. And that's a big part of compensating for the decline of the other programs. You know, that engine is cast in Brazil. It's sent to Italy for machining and assembly. From Italy, it goes to Mexico for vehicle assembly. And then from Mexico out to dealerships in North America. So we lead the dealership or the showroom date by 6 to 8 months. And that's why we're already starting to see the contribution from this program. And another one that we didn't mention is the Porsche Cayenne. So Porsche has now announced that it will bring the diesel Cayenne to North America. And that's with our Audi 3-liter V6. It won't bring a lot of volume. It's not going to be a high-selling vehicle. But it helps with the awareness. It helps with the awareness of the consumer in diesels, and it helps with the awareness and confidence and pressure, competitive pressure, with the OEMs. And what we really have to do is to build on that awareness and competitive pressure to get those engines into the pickup sector. And it's still a huge sector. It's an obvious good application for diesel in North America. And although a lot of the talk in the mainstream media, not in the trade media, but in the mainstream media, is about downsizing in North America and small cars, you know, pickup trucks have moved in North America from something like 52% of the market to 48% of the market. It's not a big shift. And the Ford F-150, the Chevy Silverado, the GM Silverado, and the Ram 1500 are still all in the top 10 best sellers in North America. There's still an absolute huge market and a huge opportunity for SinterCast and for CGI. Commercial vehicles, still our biggest growth opportunity. The total market, and we define this as vehicles larger than 6 ton, is 13 million engine equivalents. About 4 million of those are in Europe and North America. Most of the rest are in China. And if you take our current production of 555,000 from year-end 2011, that represents a penetration of something like 15% of the Western market. And of the global market, less than 5%. You know, so there's still this absolute vast area to grow into. We don't have to do anything different. We just have to do more of it. And the Chinese, who have adopted Euro-style emissions legislation and are therefore following European design leads, are specifying engines now in CGI. So there's a great growth opportunity in commercial vehicle, and particularly in the Asian commercial vehicle sector. And you can see that in this start of a shift in our production split, so that the trucks have increased in the last year, and at the expense of the passenger vehicle cylinder block production. And I think we'll see this continuing to grow in favor of commercial vehicles. We also see in this overhead what we call other components, and other components are those exhaust components in China and the industrial power sector. And I think that looking forward to the end of this year, we probably see a slight decline, so an increase in the weighting for passenger vehicle and commercial vehicle block. And beyond the exhaust components, it is industrial power in this category. And we have active development both in the marine sector and in the agricultural sector. So, you know, a new growth opportunity, 2 areas where we haven't been previously. And I think that those developments will help to keep this other component, industrial power sector, at around 10% of our total production, even as the other categories grow. Well, with the awareness and the confidence in CGI and the question that came at the end of Drew's presentation, I'm happy to announce today that we have achieved our first high-volume commitment for a CGI cylinder block in a passenger vehicle engine. So I can't give more details yet. It's still a confidential program, but the program has been approved. We know the start of production date. We know the volumes. We know the applications. And I think that breakthrough is not too strong of a word for this. You know, if we think of what happened with the V-diesels when we started high-volume production in 2003, then others followed. And it's exactly as Drew said, it's a follower industry. When somebody puts down the card, the other people have to pull their trigger. And, you know, it happened for us that way with the first wave. And let's hope that it will happen again and create a new competitive standard for petrol engines. And we'll just wait and watch that one evolve. But it's a really exciting development and a milestone for SinterCast. Thank you. And it's very nice that small applause was initiated by my predecessor in this role. He used to say that if you don't have anything signed by June, it won't happen before the end of the year. And it's usually true. And maybe that it's not quite June yet. I'm allowed to be foolish and bold. But our target for this year is to secure at least 3 new installations. Coming into the AGM, we haven't got any, but we have ongoing discussions. And it's a challenge for the team to secure those installations and have them commissioned before year end. So at least 3. And let's see if we can look back at next year's AGM and say that we broke the trend of starting in the second half of the year. And beyond that, new development, and this is development in our own house. You know, we've talked about the ductile iron technology. We're happy with the correlations that we have. They're quite good, but we want them to be better. So we carry on with our development in-house. We've studied the market. We believe that there's a need for increased process control, and we're confident that we can provide a value and a contribution to that. In parallel with our technical development in-house, we're also out talking to customers and working together with organizations such as the Ductile Iron Society to try to preface and introduce the technology. And we maintain our schedule that this is a development year and that at the end of this year we want to be able to stand and look back at the development and make our decision for the next phase. And beyond the ductile iron development, we always have our continuous improvement on the CGI side, adding functionality to the system. And we've just recently developed a new version of the System 3000, which we've branded the System 3000 Plus. And the idea with System 3000 Plus is that the foundry delivers a ladle onto a roller table, and they leave it with us. And the roller table automatically moves it into a treatment station and then over to our sampling area and into a correction station and then exit. And the foundry can pick it up and go from there. So it's a complete turnkey solution. It gives us an opportunity to provide added value, and it gives a security to the customer as well. So this is a new development, and we're just now quoting on it with a couple of projects around the world. We want to grow the company, and we have to lead that growth. And as you all know, most of the industrial growth is occurring in Asia, and it's exactly the same for SinterCast. And so we need to be there. We need to have local knowledge. We need to have a continuous presence and a continuous pressure. And over these years, we've been a lot in Asia, but it's not enough anymore to jump on the airplane every month and try to move it. You can't be a part of the community by commuting. We need a constant presence. And with that, we have been in the process of establishing a new Chinese company, SinterCast Trading Beijing. This trading company will allow us to import our goods and sell them on to customers rather than contracting an import-export agent. We have a new general manager in China who's responsible for the market development, and we have a technical sales director who's been with us for over a year now, a very skilled technical manager, and together they will be responsible for the development of that market. This is a picture of our building. We just have a small office inside of it. And it's nice to see a blue sky in Beijing as well. So the paperwork is ongoing for the establishment of that company, and we signed some papers in the board just today to keep that ball rolling. We think that the company will be established in August or perhaps July if it goes quicker. And when that company is established, we will officially close our Shanghai office and concentrate everything on the new Beijing trading company. And with that, I want to thank Dr. Frank Zhang, our first general manager in China, who, when I asked him to help SinterCast back in 2007, he uprooted his family from more than 25 years of living in Canada, and he based himself in Shanghai, and he served as the face of the company, and he gave us our introduction. And beyond that, he stayed. I think he's 4 years beyond retirement age. So I want to give a sincere thanks and recognition to him for his service and his contribution. And he will retire next week, 31 May. I'm also pleased to announce today the establishment of a new Korean company. We have hired a new general manager for Korea who started his employment just yesterday with SinterCast, and he's here today, Mr. So. Mr. So, likewise, will take responsibility for developing the Korean market, both technically and commercially. Korea has been very good to SinterCast. We have 4 installations in Korea. We have ongoing discussions. And we have very strong relationships and a very good rapport with our customers. And longer term, we have this opportunity to build up the Korean office as our technical base for Asia. And under Mr. So's guidance, we can send engineers to Japan and to China, and of course for the domestic Korean market. So I'm really excited about this. The paperwork is almost finished, so perhaps next week the company will be officially registered. And with that, we've had a representative in Korea since 1994, the Swedish Trade Promotion Center. And they have been our most successful representative. And I want to thank them today. Officially today we have canceled our agreement with them. And they remain available to support Mr. So and to support SinterCast. But Mr. Ha and his team have done a wonderful job and a great contribution, and I think it's right to recognize that and congratulate and thank him. Well, as I say, we want the company to grow, and to grow you need to be ahead of the growth, and you need more resources. And I've tried to summarize the different categories that we have within SinterCast and show the growth in the manning over the last couple of years. And what you can see is that all of the additions have been frontline. It's either technology or sales. And of course that leads to an added cost. But these people will be tasked with growing the business faster to provide a net benefit. I think that 13 people was a really small number to do the things that were asked of the company over the years. And the new organization feels better balanced. We've been recruiting very aggressively in the last year, and that's now stopped. We have the organization and we have the structure that we want to have. And this is the organization that will take us into the future. So in conclusion, if we take an outlook for the balance of 2012, increased series production, we have these couple of programs pulling in the opposite direction, but we'll have a net growth certainly in the midterm and certainly beyond that in the long term. New installation opportunities, we're late on the start, but still have a target for at least 3 before year end. New products under development, that means in the house, whether it's the System 3000 Plus to complement our existing System 3000 and our mini system, or the ductile iron. Or, of course, products outside of the company, which is the commercial vehicle growth, again, particularly in Asia, and this breakthrough opportunity on the petrol engine side with the first high-volume commitment for CGI cylinder block. We have a stronger organization. As I mentioned, it feels better. It feels like we have the right team. We'll be able to go faster and further. The market awareness continues to grow for CGI and for diesels in North America, and that's a momentum that we can continue to build on. And despite the programs pulling in the other direction and the potential that this year there may be a lower cup volume than in last year, and the added expense of the new team, particularly now in 2012 when we have the recruitment costs and the establishment costs for the new office, despite all that, the market is growing and will have a net positive result for the cash flow. And with this result, we'll be able to continue to reward the patience and the support of the shareholders with more dividend. Thank you.